Good afternoon and welcome everybody who is joining us today. Today is the 6th of April, 2021. It is afternoon in Nairobi, Kenya. And we kickstart our trade talks today with a conversation on intellectual property in international trade. What are the opportunities and what are the risks? My name is Kezi Mukiri from Ignite Trade Africa, and I will be your host this afternoon. Allow me to just allow us to even introduce ourselves as we get started. There's not too many of us on the call, but we could just even unmute and let us know what it is that you do. I know that Belinda will be speaking to us later, but Anne, if you don't mind, you could actually just go ahead and introduce yourself. Let us know what you do, what your interest in the subject is.
Hi, Kezi.
Hi.
How are you? Hi, Belinda.
Hi.
I am a firm supporter of Kezi, and everywhere Kezi is, I want to be. So forgive me if I perhaps don't even know much about the subject. I just know that I will be able to get something good out of it. And that is where I am. I'm in the events industry and a professional conference organizer. And I'm hoping to be able to find opportunities for trade in Africa and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Anne. Welcome for coming. And that is a good enough reason to be here. That's a strong enough reason. Belinda, I know you will introduce yourself extensively a little bit. I just want to run through what is the genesis of these trade talks and what is the thinking behind it. And perhaps talk a little bit about Ignite Trade Africa. And I will just quickly run through this slide, and I will not even bore you with it. So in 2017, I founded what is called Ignite Trade Africa. Our tagline is promoting inclusive trade for sustainable development. This is my thinking. I believe that trade and business is an equalizer. Trade and business is an opportunity generator for communities, where we have communities being able to access equal opportunities for trade and business. You find that you are able to deal with nearly all the sustainable development goals in a go. If you can empower people economically, then you definitely deal with issues of hunger, issues of poverty, issues of education, issues of access to healthcare. Trade is actually a facilitator, even for matters of climate change. In the current global pandemic, we have seen, and we did hear the current Director General for WTO say, trade has played a critical role in alleviating the global pandemic. Because how do we ship the vaccines, or how do we ship any equipment that's required to help people during the pandemic? It is through trade, whether it's regional trade, or it's global trade, or it is just trade across two borders, whatever it is. Trade is a facilitator for sustainable development. So our services within Ignite Trade Africa, the largest one is sustainable trade consulting. And this is essentially providing thought leadership around sustainability issues for regional businesses and for SMEs. I discovered that a lot of businesses do not have a sustainability plan, and they do not understand how it is they can incorporate even the sustainable development goals in the running of their businesses. And this became one of our flagship services and products in Ignite Trade Africa. We then offer export and investment advice specifically on the continent of Africa. What we bring on the table for many businesses that are looking to do business in Africa is cross-sectoral expertise. Like Anne, I have expertise within the meetings, events, conferencing industry. I have expertise within the legal services sector. So myself, together with our partners, we are able to provide cross-sectoral expertise for businesses. We also do partner with professionals in other sectors to offer services that we cannot. For example, IT support, HR, tax, finance. And the essence is to be able to build strong businesses on the continent. specifically the continent of Africa. My thinking is that if we can build strong, sustainable, thriving enterprises, then we're able to deal with a lot of the issues that the continent grapples with. Trade missions and trade exports has been a huge one. We've done trade missions across East Africa, Rwanda to Kenya, Kenya and Rwanda to Ethiopia, then the three countries off to Uganda. We've done East and West trade missions. In 2019, towards the end of 2019, I had a huge group of West African countries bundled together visiting East Africa, and they did a tour of Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda. And I find that building those linkages helps business people, particularly women entrepreneurs, whom I'm very passionate about. When you build linkages, you give them confidence to be able to trade across the borders because they've already formed certain partnerships that are important for them. Business workshops, trainings, seminars, capacity development programs, that's something else that we do to build capacity of SMEs and to enhance their confidence to trade across the region. We then have overseas marketing and promotion. One of the things I found that for any business, typically even local businesses, when you begin to trade, you want to create awareness in the public of what your services are. It's very similar for when you're trading across the markets. You have to build a campaign that allows you to be known in the market you're seeking to penetrate. Hence the service of overseas marketing and promotion. The next one is business and cultural training. Did you know that culture plays a significant role to start to engage in regional or international trade? Then understanding the culture of the market in which you want to do business becomes very critical, very critical. An example I could share, I do know that there was once a diplomatic mission in Kenya, one of the South Pacific or Asian countries, visiting in Kenya for a trade negotiation, certain bilateral dialogue that was going on. And one of the waters, one of the brands that was served in that, the name of that brand means something very offensive in the country of origin. So those subtle are not helpful. So we take the business cultural training and seminars really important, because if you're trading in West Africa, there are certain nuances that if you bring to East Africa, you will not survive the market. And I believe here in East Africa, we have seen businesses, particularly Southern African businesses that came and launched in this market, but they could not thrive, they could not survive because of a lack of understanding of the culture, the business culture of the people in the region where they are seeking to expand to. So not too long ago, we came up with the concept of these trade talks. The trade talks are simply aimed at building a community of consultants and entrepreneurs. In the business mentoring and coaching programs that I do for entrepreneurs who are looking to build capacity to export, for many of them, their biggest fear is they don't even know where to start. Who are the kinds of professionals or consultants should they go to for advisory services on how to trade with the region? The trade talks are also intended to be a platform for knowledge exchange, networking, and identifying opportunities. When professionals come together like ourselves, there's knowledge exchange, there's networks that happen, there's opportunities that are generated in conversations such as this. And then lastly, these meetings are intended for trade professionals, for SME business owners, for trade associations, and for general trade enthusiasts. So anybody who is looking to explore trade opportunities on the continent and beyond. So we have a series of discussions such as this. They're not formal webinars, around table conversations where you get to ask questions in a safe space. You get to converse with industry colleagues or with professionals who you otherwise access in different platforms. So today we focus on intellectual property in international trade. What are the opportunities? On the 13th, we'll be running a conversation on international sales channels. So how do you go about it? What are the go-to-market strategies? And we have a speaker joining us from West Africa to handle this particular conversation next week. The 20th of May, we're talking about digital globalization, the enhancement of inclusivity in trade, the role that our digital connections has played in enhancing connections and facilitating inclusivity in trade. Then on the 27th, we talk about the future of global trade. Let me backtrack. On the 20th, our speaker will be coming from Uganda, joining us from Uganda, talking about digital globalization and even how to utilize media for regional expansion. Then on 27th, we have a panel that's drawn from the South of Africa, the West of Africa, and East of Africa, talking about the future of global trade. What are the changes? What are the challenges? And what are the emerging opportunities? So today we have Belinda from KIPI, Kenya Industry Properties Institute. Belinda, you can go ahead and introduce yourself even as I get ready to project your presentation.
Thank you very much, Casey. From the introduction, I need no further introductions, but when Casey is, as she is putting up my presentation, let me just get the ground rolling. At least my video is there. I hope I'm clear enough. Am I?
Yes, you are. Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, fine. So my name is Belinda Ilagosa. I work at Kenya Industrial Property Institute as a patent examiner. Kenya Industrial Institute is an agency in the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Enterprise Development. We have a function and a mission to support our local innovators as well as local business so that they can get to the maximum and take the business to the next level. That is both locally and international. Fortunately, Casey, this talk is coming in a month that we've come up, the government has initiated negotiations. Like yesterday was a day of joy to most of our local traders. When the president of our neighboring country, Tanzania, was here for negotiations so that we can promote trade between these two countries and even beyond in the region as well as in the globe. So without much presentation of myself or me saying whom I am, let me just go to the topic of the day, which is on intellectual property rights and international trade. So a brief introduction of what is intellectual property rights and how it's supposed to be used on international scale. So when you think of intellectual property, think of property that relates to creations of human mind. Remember, we are most commonly used to the ordinary tangible property, a piece of land, a car, or such form of tangible property. But intellectual property, to understand it deeper, remember that this is the type of property that relates to creations of human mind or the human intellect. When I develop a product, a new one for that matter, a process or a service, I am entitled to ownership. In that case, this is considered my IP. So intellectual property is that form of entitlement and ownership to creations of the mind, and ordinarily it requires formal registration by a government agency so as to ensure legal ownership. Next. This is well protected under intellectual property law. Casey, next slide. Yes. So what does intellectual property law relate to? We have different forms of law, and intellectual property law is that particular law with rules for securing and enforcing legal rights to inventions, brands, logos, designs, literary and artistic works, or new plant varieties. A lot has happened, especially with the COVID-19. It was a pandemic that hit us very badly, but there are several opportunities that came up with the pandemic. This pandemic reminded us that we have to go back to the drawing board and relook at ourselves and identify what is it that we are able to do as a nation rather than banking on the rest of the globe. Remember, initially it was very easy to travel out and go for medical attention. But when the pandemic hit us, we were reminded that we have to be self-sustainable in different ways, from medical perspective, as well as our own consumption. Remember when we had issues on export and import, border point issues because of the pandemic, that was a reminder that for our economy to keep running, we should at least try to the best level that we can and be self-sustainable, such that in case of such an activity, in case of such pandemics, we can somehow survive. So the two types of property that I had mentioned, one is the tangible one that we are commonly used to, and the intangible ones. So the intangible ones that relate to brands, inventions, know-how, and artistic skills are what are entitled to intellectual property rights. And they give you exclusive control of the intangible assets. So IP in that case, like it's a reminder in this case, represents the property over creations of human mind. So you may ask yourself, now it is the right granted over intangible form of property. What are these types of intellectual property in Kenya? They include industrial property rights. You have developed a product that is ready for export. Are you going to export it anonymously? Not at all. Thank you, Kezi, for your introduction. When you talked of that mission that was here, and there was a product that was on sale, but under a brand name that was not very comfortably embraced by the country of this country. So when you're exporting your products, they go by certain brand names. Remember what we associate with Kenyan tea or the Kenyan coffee. So once you have your products ready, they are subject to different types of intellectual property. These include the patents. Patents are for inventions, utility models, which are more or less the same as patents, but deeper inside, I will explain the difference. And trademarks, the brands, the very good brands that we all associate with, industrial designs, geographical indications. This is a form of right given to communities, and it associates a product with certain characteristics to a certain place of origin. Another type of intellectual property, the first one was industrial property rights. Then we have the copyrights. We also have new plant varieties or the breeders' rights. When we are talking about the GMOs for food security, it is as a result of breeders' activities to develop these new plant varieties, and they are entitled to a certain type of intellectual property. We also have what we call trade secrets. When you're running a business, it is important that you have those confidential information only to keep within your business for so many reasons. This can be categorized as a trade secret. Then we also have the traditional knowledge and cultural expressions. By virtue of my name, from the introduction, you can always relate me to which part of the country I come from. So besides the name, there is also that practice that is associated with the Kenyan Maasai or the Kikuyus from Mount Kenya. The cultural practices and expressions from certain communities are equally protected so that we don't at some point start claiming the Maasai Kikoi belongs to me, because we have always associated it with a certain community. Next, Kezi. So the first category of intellectual property I introduced were the industrial property rights. And this is where I am more relevant here. These industrial property rights are granted by Kenya Industrial Property Institute. Who is KIPI, or Kenya Industrial Property Institute? Is a state corporation under the Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development. Our mandate is to support SMEs by administering industrial property rights, providing intellectual property information, and for economic development and technological development, as well as to promote inventiveness in Kenya, because challenges will always come and we cannot live as a nation that is not inventive. That makes the difference between the developed and the developing nations. So we promote inventiveness in Kenya through industrial property rights, and also KIPI will provide training on industrial property. And I think that is why I'm here. Thank you, Kezi, for the invitation. This is a platform for us to reach out to the public. Next. I will briefly explain the types of IPRs that you will be issued with at Kenya Industrial Property Institute. And the first one is a patent. You ask yourself, what is a patent? A patent is a right granted to an invention. We are talking of inventions like the vaccines. I hope we have gotten the jab for the sake of our own safety. And we acknowledge that there are scientists who went into research, developed inventions, and came up with a vaccine. So in that case, they are entitled to what we call a patent right. An invention can be a product. By product, I mean a device or a substance. It can also be a process or a method of doing something. The invention to be granted a patent right must be new, inventive, and industrially applicable. So what does a patent right do? It gives the owner the exclusive right to the invention for a period of 20 years in Kenya. A patent right can be legally enforced in case of an infringement. The next type of industrial property right that you will be issued with at KIPI is a utility model. A utility model is more or less same to a patent, but the threshold for you to acquire a utility model is somehow not as strict as that one for a patent. So we say it is a petty patent for improvements to inventions. The improvements must, however, be new and be useful in industry, or in other words, we say industrially applicable. If you compare it with a patent, you will notice that a patent must be new. Then there's another requirement of inventive step and industrial applicability. So when your invention lacks the inventive step requirement, then you can convert it to a utility model. This is very, very relevant to our SMEs because they are still starting small. And what they produce more or less is usually improvements to existing technologies. So our SMEs will highly be encouraged to utilize the utility model form of protection. In Kenya, it gives you exclusive rights for a period of 10 years. Remember, the patent was 20 years. Now that makes the difference. However, in terms of enforcement, a utility model right can be legally enforced in a manner similar to the patent in case of an infringement. Another type of industrial property right that you can obtain at KIPI is the industrial design. An industrial design refers to features of shape, configuration, pattern, or ornamentation that give an article a unique appearance. On my right, on the right of this slide, we have two examples of articles that have been granted industrial design rights. The upper one is a package. This is a special package that has a special appearance. We will all agree that when you are walking into the shop or a supermarket, more often than not, the package will always drive you to what you will pick before you even go to the contents of the package. So by virtue of that pattern, the applicant sought protection for such a package as an industrial design. Therefore, be cautious when you want to duplicate. I mean, in business, we have people who want to copy and imitate, and we have the genuine ones. Be cautious when you are dealing with such type of industrial designs, because these are rights that have already been granted to applicants. The lower one is a unique type of container. We want a container that has both the side for dispensing and the other side, which you can just pour. If you walk into the supermarket, you will easily identify with the container. So by virtue of that unique form of appearance, the article is subject to protection as an industrial design. And these industrial design rights relate to appearance rather than to function. Usually, we call the ornamentative form of an article. Yeah, next. Another type of industrial property rights that you will be granted at KIPI is the trademark. This is very important, especially in business. This is very crucial. And like the example that Casey started with, you need to brand our products. When you're doing your tea, call it Kerito Gold or whatever, so that I can always associate your product with a certain name. And for SMEs, take note that there is a difference between registration of a company and registration of a trademark. Registration of a company is a legal requirement that it should be done by any existing entity under the registration of business name under the Companies Act. But this does not grant you exclusive rights to the brand name. So in addition to the registration of your company, please remember to register your trademark. Examples are those ones highlighted there. You shall have the presentation, therefore I need not to go into details of what a trademark is, but at least you can tell the difference. What is a trademark? What is a patent? What is a utility model? And what is an industrial design? Next, Casey. Another type of intellectual property is a copyright. A copyright is free and automatic legal rights given to authors or creators of original work. Copyrights must be fixed into tangible form. Copyrights are not granted to ideas. Computer programs, because we are in an era whereby a lot of computer applications are happening, there's a lot of artificial intelligence, a lot of computer programs are best protected under copyright. So what you need to take note is that the government agency responsible for registration of copyright is the Kenya Copyright Board and not Kenya Industrial Property Institute, as I have indicated in the presentation. And then we have another type of intellectual property. This is the trade secret. This is just a valuable piece of know-how and business information that is always treated as confidential. It gives the company a competitive advantage. There is information that you feel like, you see, when you want a patent, you have to disclose it to KIPI. If you want a copyright, you have to submit it at the Kenya Copyright Board. If it has a plant breeder's right, KIPI has to examine and ensure that it conforms with the requirements for protection of new plant varieties. But you feel like in business, you still have some information that has to be kept confidential from both these government agencies as well as competitors. So this can well be kept as a trade secret. Examples, it could be a recipe. Remember, we walk into different restaurants courtesy of the taste that comes with the food from that restaurant. Why? Probably the chef has a secret towards this recipe. It could be the results of a marketing study. Remember, this will inform you on how to forge forward with regards to your business. It could be the launch of a new product. 10 months down the line, you want to know. It is very important, those dates. It is important for your business, but you don't have to disclose this information elsewhere for certain rights. So those can be kept as trade secrets. It could be the price offered in a bidding procedure. We know how competitive bidding can be. So that price that you will offer, let's say that makes your business successful in winning this business opportunity, that can be kept as a trade secret. It could also be your customers' lists. This is not information that you want to share with your competitor or you want to share with a government agency for the success of your business. This can be subject to be kept as trade secrets. What you need to know is that with trade secrets, no registration is required in any office. So our topic for the day is intellectual property and international trade. What are the opportunities and risks that come up with intellectual property? In that case, I chose to discuss with you opportunities in terms of what are the advantages of intellectual property on the international platform. As an SME, once you have acquired this intellectual property, what advantages do you get in terms of hitting out into the international market? One of them is that you get a competitive advantage over similar businesses. We will all associate in the medical field, that's my background. Sorry if I feel I am a bit biased. We will all associate with the original drugs. And we know the cost to which it comes at. Much as we are aware, the generics will always have the same functional capacity as the original. But if it's not for the pocket capabilities, we will always associate with original brands. Take note that these are the products that are subject to protection under intellectual property rights. So in that case, it will always give you a competitive edge over other businesses. IP also enhances your company value. When you're talking about your company value, usually IP is a component to be considered in terms of how valuable is your company. Compare company X and Y. X probably has not acquired any IP rights, but company Y has sought those IP rights. In terms of value, the company that has sought IP rights is usually valued more than a company that has not sought IP rights. Another opportunity or advantage is that it helps you market your company's products and services. Back to branding. How do I tell the Asians that this tea is from Kenya? Clearly, by the brand name. We talk of Kericho Gold, and we can actually relate to tea from Kenya and in particular the highlands of Kericho. So it is easy for you to market your company's products and services. If I'm talking about the Hilton Hotel, it is by virtue of that trademark Hilton Hotel that I am able to market that company's service. Intellectual property, another opportunity, can help you in investments. When we had the Lions Den running and the investors were very ready to invest in some of the businesses, one of the components they would consider is where are you in terms of intellectual property position? And you could see it was such a walk in the park for some of the SMEs in terms of getting investors or financing, because it's very convincing. It's more convincing when you have these IP rights than when you don't have to an investor. IP offers greater export opportunities. We have what we call local intellectual property rights, and then intellectual property rights are territorial. So you can acquire them locally, and then with interest, based also on your market survey, get them internationally. And Kenya as a nation is party to many protocols and treaties, international ones, to promote trade for local products. So it offers better export opportunities to our local products. Then the trade secrets, no fees comes with trade secrets. You only have to, it is binding in terms of confidentiality so that there is no break, but you do not require any fees to acquire trade secrets. IP helps an SME in brand recognition and ability to build reputation. It also incentivizes an innovator to recoup initial costs. This is particularly important, let's say look at the vaccines. I will use it. Look at the vaccines. A lot of costs was put in the research and development of vaccines. But look at the market need. It is what we require. The rest of the world requires vaccines. So it gives the owners of these IP rights an incentive to recoup their initial costs. And then free to use technologies for expired rights. When the president was advocating for the Big Four agenda, we were asked as KIPI, how are you going to support these SMEs? If I refresh a little bit on the term for a patent, it's 20 years. So the validity of a patent is 20 years. After 20 years, if this technology is still of use, take advantage and note that you can easily get those rights and exploit them. At this point in time, you are free to use the technology because you are not infringing on anybody's rights. So that can be an opportunity, especially for startups and SMEs. So some other opportunities, you are in a position to submit your application online. That is, if you have any type of IP. For Kekobo, they have a very active online platform. For KPS, you can equally submit your applications online. Then we also have the virtual trainings on intellectual property. You can make good use of them, especially if you are available. For instance, Casey, thank you for organizing this one. We can reach out to so many people. Take advantage, get the knowledge. What is empowering you? What will empower you as an SME is nothing but knowledge. Then we also have accelerated examination for COVID-related applications. If you still feel like you have COVID-related applications, you are entitled to request the office to accelerate examination so that you can exploit it. Before, we don't know about COVID, it could end over time. And also bilateral agreements. This is an opportunity. We get to various bilateral agreements. Currently, we have negotiations on US trade agreements. We also have the AFC, the African trade agreements, that is a done deal. Those are opportunities that local SMEs can exploit for the benefit of exporting their products. We also have some treaties, for instance, the TRIPS flexibility for developing nations. This is a flexibility that helps developing nations to come at least to a level whereby they can explore matters intellectual property, at least for their own business and sustainability. The TRIPS flexibility is a very detailed law that, well, I just mentioned briefly. Then we also have extension of time for your filing and pleadings. Just in case there's an infringement somewhere, usually there's a provision for extension of time for you to file your documentation or your pleadings. Now to challenges and risks. We have a big challenge in terms of awareness of IP among SMEs. It is very low. So this makes them very vulnerable to exploitation, especially by the multinationals or the foreign companies. So this is a thing that we should probably address through more awareness so that our SMEs are not very vulnerable to such exploitation. We also have a challenge on risk of IP. I will go back to what I have been quoting, the IP related to vaccines. But sometimes when there's a limitation to, especially the patent, right? In terms of what we call government use. The government can find that, yes, you have a very noble invention, but whatever you're solving is very crucial. Like now, what is happening on the COVID-19 space? Yes, companies have developed vaccines over COVID, but due to the problem that we're experiencing, the pandemic, some governments are initiating that these IP rights should be left. I mean, the owners of these IP rights should leave this because we are solving a problem of a pandemic. When we look at the scenes coming from India, it's a sad state of affair. And you see, they can't readily exploit these vaccines because there are people who own these rights. So there's usually an allowance whereby the government can acquire these rights for the sake of solving a problem. Like in our case, we have the pandemic. So there's what countries are signing up to through the WTO, so that if we come to an agreement, then at least these companies will not be entitled to the rights, but then we can have access to the vaccine. So that's a limitation. We also have low level of technology, such that our SMEs, because of the challenges they all go through, they have issues with capital and stuff, the levels of the development of technology is still low. And then we also have the challenges and the risks of pirating and imitations. Yeah, because when your product is high end, it is bound to be exploited and it is bound to be subject to imitations. Then we also have exclusions. Ideas, if you remember what a copyright is entitled to, is something that must be fixed. Therefore, when we say, I have an idea or a concept, these are subjects excluded to IP protection. You have to move from the idea to the real thing. So this is an exclusion because most of the time SMEs will tell us, that was my idea, but company X, which is a big company, went ahead and implemented it. But you see, now ideas are not subject to IP protection. Those are just a few of the risks and challenges. So in conclusion, what do we take home from this discussion? We have a few take-home tips for SMEs. What should you do as an SME regarding intellectual property? 1, start early. Start early by making IP consideration when developing your business plan at the very initial stage. When you're having your business plan, think of IP. Think of what are you going to call your product. You have your company registered? Yes, think of registration of a trademark so that you get exclusive rights to this form of brand. Yes, that is number 2. Consider trademarks. Remember that a trademark is different from a business name. So register your business name, yes, and then also register your trademark so that you get exclusive rights. Number 3, that is very important. As an SME or an owner of IP, take a personal responsibility to manage and renew your IP registration. Now, if it is on international trade platform, remember IP rights are territorial. So if you acquire IP rights in Kenya and you want to trade in Rwanda, ensure that you have sought these IP rights in Rwanda. They are valid. You have paid your annual maintenance fees. And yeah, that is a very important take-home tip for you as an SME. Another thing is avoid publishing your ideas, because that is what most SMEs, from experience, most SMEs will cry off is, yes, it was my idea, but company X went ahead and implemented my idea. So the problem, the bone of contention is, how do they get to know that? Apparently, I shared this idea with them. That is not right. You may not be able to get a patent if you have discussed, demonstrated, or sold your creation. If you need to discuss your idea with other people, Casey will tell you that you need to make what we call, or to sign a confidentiality agreement. Last but not least, intellectual property is for everyone. It's not only for the multinationals. It's not only for Procter and Gamble, for Unilever. Even SMEs can be entitled to some form of IP rights, which is very helpful in their business. For this and more, we can engage behind the scenes. I want to thank you so much and wish you well in your businesses. And back to you, Kezi. And I want to ask you all to stay safe. The contacts for KIPI are on that slide. Get in touch on email, info@kipi.go.ke, or you can get to our website at KIPI. Thank you so much. Back to you, Kezi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Belinda. Thank you. Let me tell you, I love small meetings. I really love, small intimate meetings. Thank you, Anne, for being here throughout. And we have Anne as well, who joined us along the way. Thank you for being here. I'm just wondering if you have questions lined up, and any kinds of questions. What do you think about that? Belinda, I'm wondering about the traditional knowledge. We have a lot of traditional knowledge, cultural expressions in Kenya, in Africa. Who is responsible for the pursuit of the protection?
Okay. Traditional knowledge and cultural expression. There is an act on traditional knowledge and cultural expression. I think it's 2017, and it's very well protected. The custodian of this act is the Kenya Copyright Board. So usually it's a multi-stakeholder form of an initiative, but if you have something that is cross-cutting, we can advise, but the best people to protect traditional knowledge and cultural expression are the Kenya Copyright Board, because now the act, they're in charge of the TK Act.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Belinda. I think generally speaking, the subject of intellectual property rights, and I see your hand is up. Yes, go first.
Thank you, Kezi. And thank you very much, Belinda. That was an excellent explanation and presentation on what KIPI is about and what opportunities and risks there are. Now, I have two questions. The first one is, it seems to me, or maybe just a comment, it seems to me that the service industry is really not captured in intellectual property rights. And I don't know how that can be tackled. And the other question I have is on costs. You have not indicated what it would cost for one to, for instance, work on a trademark through KIPI. What are the costs, just as a guideline? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you so much, Anne. Kezi, is it okay if I proceed to respond?
Yes, please do. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, fine. So this presentation, this was a 1 hour thing. Sorry, I didn't get into the course, but at least I briefly introduced what these rights are. So for a trademark, since you have asked about a trademark, it would cost you roughly 12,000 shillings for complete process protection of a trademark in one class of goods. I mean, let me use the example of Kabarak University. We know Kabarak University is, we associate it with the school, I mean, a learning institution. So if they wanted a trademark for purely learning activities, that is a service, they would pay 12,000 Kenyan shillings. That's one class. But let's say they are also thinking of venturing into a product like the Kabarak water. So now that would require a second class of protection, the class relating to water and beverages. So there's always an additional cost if you are getting protection in a different class of goods. We have NIST classification of goods and services. So when you're talking about Jubilee, we know the Jubilee political party, we know Jubilee insurance, and maybe Jubilee for a Jubilee hotel. Those are different classes of goods and services. So you will be required to pay depending on the number of classes that you are expressing interest in. Therefore, for one class only, it will cost you. Like you are in event management. Let me say you're probably calling yourself the business. So you will only require to register for one class or event management, and it will cost you 12,000 shillings for 10 years because you will need to renew your trademark after 10 years. Sorry, I couldn't get into those details because of time. I also did not get into details of now, how does an SME get these IP rights on international scale? We have the regional avenue. You can always ask, and then we advise. At least if you have a starting point as KIPI, KIPI can advise you on how you can do protection in Rwanda, Zimbabwe, Ghana, let's say those African countries. Or if you want to go beyond, we also have treaties that we are party to that you can always explore in terms of protection. But today, courtesy of time, it was just an introduction. That's the second question. The first question or comment that is on service industry and uptake of IP rights. Well, mostly it applies on brands. We can really easily associate with you as an event organizer. Look at the Bonfire Adventures. This is not a brand name that you'd want to let go. This is subject to trademark protection. Technologies, you could probably be exploiting different type of technologies that are subject to intellectual property or patents for that matter. So usually more often than not, once we are in touch, we will give you individual advice based on your case. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Belinda. And Gaiza, karibu sana, make your comment.
Hi, Kezi. Actually, it's not comment. I had 3 questions. And I think Belinda alluded a little bit, but I just needed some clarification. So the first one really was around company name and trademark. But my question is, if you have a company name and you hadn't trademarked, but then now you realize it's important to have a trademark, and then you get a trademark, but then you find somebody existing who has probably a similar company name. What happens in that case? Does the person who has the company name cease operation, or what happens? What right do you have as having the trademark? So that, I don't know if you've understood my question, but that's the first question I have. The second one that I wanted to find out, if somebody wants to participate and maybe get a patent or a trademark, should they go directly to KIPI or should they go through a lawyer, right? Because you mentioned about cost, and of course, if you go through a lawyer, they will charge their legal fees. So should someone go directly to KIPI, or is it best to go through a lawyer? And what are the contacts for KIPI to do that? And then the last question, and I think you alluded to it a little bit, but the issue is around, I may have a patent or a trademark or copyright in Kenya, and now we are going Pan-African. Does that mean that every country I go to, I will have to now go through this process again? Or does that mean that if I do it in Kenya, there is a way legally to make sure that it's enforceable in all African countries? Thank you, Belinda.
Belinda, you can jump into it.
Okay, thank you so much, Anne. Number one, company name registered as a company, and then you did not register as a trademark. Then somebody else came and registered the trademark, and now they have the exclusive rights. So later on, you realize that you want to register this trademark so that you get the exclusive rights. Chances are that you're going to fail to get these exclusive rights. For failure to have sought the trademark rights at the initial stage. And I take you back to my presentation on the home tips for SMEs. Always start early. Under the IP regime, we have what we call the first to file rule. this applies in most of these territories. So KIPI will give these exclusive rights. Remember, the function of KIPI is to give the exclusive rights, but the registrar of companies is to identify how many business entities are in existence, how many companies are in existence, but they're not giving you exclusive rights. So usually at the company's registration, you will also be told if this is available for registration of rights. But I'm not saying that the scenario that you gave an example may fail to happen. It may likely happen that yes, somebody registered a trademark under the name that you're operating with as a company name. So you will still maintain your company name, but you might probably not get the exclusive rights to the trademark. So normally what happens, remember, a company might have several trademarks. For example, Safaricom. Safaricom is a registered company name and also a registered trademark. A registered company, well, under the company's registration. But with trademarks, it has several, probably there's a trademark Safaricom as an ISP provider. Then there's several other trademarks, the M-Pesa for cash transactions, the Fuliza for cash transactions. So now you have registered your company. I will still call it company is Ann, but this Ann company is associated with events management. There is a class for events management. And then there is another company, the other company that had sought a trademark was probably in a different class. Let's say it's dealing with confectionery. By virtue of the two of you expressing interest in registration of a trademark in different classes of goods or services, then there is probably an allowance that you might get your registration. But if, let's say, you registered your company and then somebody else came and registered that name and a class that you're also expressing interest, it is unfortunate that you will be denied these trademark rights by virtue of the first to file rule. So always do this in tandem. When you're registering your company, please also seek the trademark rights. That's question number one. Question number two, involving a lawyer, not necessarily, especially if you are a Kenyan. The requirements in the Act are that you must have a lawyer or an agent if you're not a local resident. So if you're Kenyan, Ann, please be assured that you can work without a lawyer. But if you also don't work to the up and about of the activities with KIPI, you can get a lawyer, but it is not mandatory. So the 12,000 fee is the KIPI fee, no legal fees. So in case you choose a lawyer, then now that is another negotiation that you'll have to come to terms with your lawyer. Is that clear, Anne?
That's clear, but I guess the question was then how do you go about doing it yourself? Is it through your website or through...
Oh, okay. How do you go about doing it by yourself? It's mostly through the website.
Or
the email. There's the email that I gave at the end of my presentation, info@kipi.go.ke. Expressing interest in what you want, whether it's a patent, you will be directed to the patent section. If it is a trademark, you'll be directed to the trademark section. But that is a very useful email that you can always use, info@kipi.go.ke. Is that clear?
Thank you.
Okay. And then question number 3, patent rights in Kenya, and you want to get this protection in the Pan-African territory. Patent rights are territorial. So if you get a patent in Kenya, it's only valid in Kenya. However, Kenya is party to what we call the Harare Protocol. This is for protection of your rights in the region, basically Africa, in member states to the Harare Protocol. There are currently 20. So if you want to get the rights in those 20 countries, party to the Harare Protocol, Kenya is a receiving office. Kenya is a receiving office, so it submits your application to ARIPO. ARIPO is the organization mandated to run this Harare Protocol. And therefore, one rights granted by ARIPO is usually valid in all those 20 member states countries. If you are interested in getting these rights in the West African country, we also have another organization in charge of intellectual property known as the OAPI. So you will indicate the countries of interest that you want to get these rights. One application, one valid right at OAPI is also valid in the member states to OAPI. But we have some countries like South Africa. They are not party to OAPI, not party to ARIPO or the Harare Protocol. So when it gets to such a country, a unique one like South Africa, you will have to undergo the same process that you have initiated in Kenya so that you get these rights valid in South Africa. So it will really depend with the countries of interest you are interested in. If it is beyond Africa, we also have some other treaties and protocols that you can exploit. So it really depends. Anne. Is that clear?
Yes, very clear. Thank you, Belinda.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Belinda. You have tackled it very extensively. I was going to say within Africa, and interestingly, one of the partnerships that we've brokered as Ignited Africa is with ARIPO. Because when you have businesses beginning to build export strategies and moving across the region, intellectual property protection becomes a key issue. So several of some of the clients that we are working with have interests in Ghana, for example, in Rwanda, and then in the southern parts of Africa. So countries like Zimbabwe, obviously, I know Zambia, Botswana, those are member states of the Harare Protocol. So like Belinda said, it depends on where it is that you are flapping your wings to. But the good thing is we know that under the AFCFTA, one of the protocols that is entering negotiation is the protocol on intellectual property rights, because that is definitely a concern for businesses on the continent and even global brands entering the continent to do business. So we did promise that the trade talks are a 1-hour conversation. I know they can get very engaging. I'm very delighted to have had a really small meeting today and to have a scenario where questions can be answered satisfactorily. For those of us in the services sector, and interestingly, all of us on this call have a bearing in the services sector, I think proper mapping of what are trade secrets, that's a starting point. You can begin to look within your business, whether it is the organizational schemes, whether it is your training methods, whether it is property that is intellectual and pertinent to the way you run your business that makes you unique, that you can begin to protect. Trademarks as well, that's a significant one, whether you're in services or in manufacturing or in agribusiness. When I registered one of our businesses back in 2007, one of the very first actions that I did was to visit the KIPI office and began the process of registering a trademark. And, Zuri Events is in the events industry, and we did register the mark in the category that we were doing business. A few years later, one of the largest flower farms in this country started to sell a flower with a name. They manufactured a flower, you might know them because I know both of you and Anne's. Somewhat. You know that there is a flower, a rose flower that is marketed under the name Zuri. And, they went all out and, they had trucks branded that name. And, we could not challenge that claim because their trademark was registered in a different category. What, however, we did, we could have a right to challenge were similar businesses that were being started in the events industry with the same name. That did happen with a business that was in Meru and later on with a business that was operating in Mombasa. And in both instances, we were able to successfully challenge. So it is of importance. It's of importance for us as SMEs to mind our intellectual property. We have entered the knowledge economy for the last several years, and I think very intensively now. We're in the knowledge economy. The output of your mind, the way the ethos or the methodologies with which you run your business, they are worth protection. How does it help you as a business to protect your intellectual property? Belinda has gone extensively on those advantages, but suffice it to say, your business is stronger when you can demonstrate that you have unique, protectable, and commercializable ideas that are unique to your business. It definitely enhances the value of the business. When it comes to negotiating partnerships or even joint ventures or in investments, people that are looking to invest in your business, it definitely does add a lot more value if your business has got unique ideas that are protected by law. It definitely stops others from commercially mining or commercially utilizing inventions that belong to your business. It enables you unlicensing fees or royalties. For example, if you are to go into a franchising model, it allows you to generate fees from the many years of hard work as you have been developing your model and developing the methodologies of your business. So I want to thank you very much for coming on today. Next week, we have a conversation on international sales channels. How do you, what are the critical go-to-market strategies that we can think of as small businesses, whether in the services sector, and I do have a heart for specifically women-owned businesses in the services sector, because the services sector is low-hanging fruit for women to be able to leverage on international trade and to export their services across our regional borders. So next week we have a conversation that will be led by West African sisters, a speaker from West Africa and a larger audience, mostly from West Africa, talking about international sales channels. So thank you for coming today. We will not take any more of your time. We are 9 minutes past the hour. I hope this has been helpful to you. I will definitely send a copy of today's presentation to you, each one of you. Belinda, thank you for your time. Keep doing what it is that you're doing. We're very proud of the moves that Kenya is making when it comes to intellectual property. Asante
Thank you.
sana.
Thank you, and bye. Kezi, I like your experience. You know, for us, we are from the other end, the administrators. So if for you, kwa ground, I like your experience. Thank you for sharing.
Asante, asante sana. And thank you. Thank you. It's very interesting. You said rightly, SMEs and IPRs. SMEs don't understand what is all this jargon. How does it even affect me? And even in preparing for this conversation, a lot of SMEs ask, isn't that for, bigger businesses? But the thing is, you start with the end in mind. I've always said, start with the end in mind. If you want to eternally run a small business, then have a small kind of thinking. But if you are starting a business for purposes of growing it to a regional or a global brand, then you adopt the thinking and associations and networks that are synonymous with that kind of growth. So I'm excited that today we had these businesses that are here, and these ones that are here also have networks and contacts with many other SMEs who they can influence to think growth, think global, think structured, think big. Because SMEs can have meaningful impact in our communities and beyond. Asante sana, thank you very much. Good afternoon, God bless you.
Thank you, Kezi.
Bye.
Bye, Kezi. Bye, everyone.
Bye.